Hello, hello and assalamu alaikum from UK. This is me, Nadeem Khan, your host for Reset. Today we will be talking about relationships. We have a special guest today. Before I introduce our guest today, I would like to just do a very quick recap on what this series is about. So Reset is basically for individuals who are looking to reset themselves, who want to establish the courage to reset themselves and to survive, not only survive but thrive the pandemic situation that is currently taking place. And we've done a series of different. I think we've invited a series of different people with special skills to enable us, to help us to move along this pandemic and improve ourselves and motivate ourselves and find our passion and move forward, especially in these tough times. So we started this series off by looking at mental toughness, what it means to be resilient. Then we moved on to understanding how we embrace passion, how we look at passion. Then we looked at the different trajectories careers will be facing in the near future, and how that would evolve. We also looked at the impact of technology and probably how that will impact our future. What are the digital skills that will be required going forward with the whole situation that is currently taking place, and also looking at leadership and very just yesterday we were looking at the purpose, finding our purpose in life. So with that said, today we are going to be looking at, since we're all in this together, we're at home, we're spending a lot of time with our family. There tend to be a lot of problems that are happening, and especially with that, relationships is something that need to be managed both inside our homes and outside. There was a recent article that I read around, when the pandemic abates. Especially in China, there were a lot of divorces. People had filed for a lot of divorces, and one of the reasons I felt that it is important to call an expert. And today we've invited Wajeeha Amin, and I'd like to briefly introduce Wajeeha before I invite her. So Wajeeha basically leads people on a deep and powerful journey to flourish in their relationships, studies, careers, business, dreams, life, and love. As a qualified psychotherapist, relationship coach, mentor, lecturer, and trainer, she provides creative, holistic, therapeutic support, mentoring, training, and coaching to individuals, groups, and consultancy services to everyone needing to make a change in their lives or wanting to help others do the same. So she's been featured in the BBC. She was a finalist for Asian Woman of Achievement Award for her work as an ambassador for Women of the Future. She's on a mission to create millions of happy ever after stories, one person at a time. So let me invite Wajeeha over. Assalamu alaikum, Wajeeha.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope that we'll be able to do justice with the introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Wajeeha is basically not just a relationship coach, but I would say, a life coach at this point in time. And relationships are evolving. So I'll just hit the nail on the wall. What do you think will be the future of relationships going forward? As I said, we're all stranded at our home, where we're closed with our families, with our kids. We're spending more time, and there, as a lot of people are talking about the bright side of it, but there is also a negative and I would say a negative side to it. So is it okay if we start from here then?
Yeah, gosh, talking about relationships is my favorite subject. And when I talk about relationships, it's not exclusive to romantic relationships. We have relationships with many, many different people and organizations and the environment as well. And one thing that is a given, which is something that you touched upon with the article from China, is that disasters have a way of being relationship accelerators. So either it's going to bring us closer together,
yes,
or it's going to push us further apart.
Yes.
you know.
So do you think there's a kind of correlation between love marriages and arranged marriages? That's something which probably, if there is a listener out there, yeah, I never wanted to get married to this one, and we I didn't want to have kids. Why is this happening to me? That's the kind of thing. And then I'm not going to office, and I just get out of the house, and I can't go out of the house. And a lot of these are a lot of the questions that might be, because I don't know, I've been working from home, but I've probably 10 years of my life I've also went to office. But then when the transition took place, I had to deal with a lot of probably the mindset change. Do you think it's happening now?
Yeah, no, definitely, because some people used whatever normal was and whatever the new normal is going to be,
Yeah.
as a way of escaping. So they, to escape, as in go to work. You've got those hours where you're away from home, or you're going to college, university,
Yeah.
and you had that sense of escape. You had that routine, and it became a normal routine. So even if things weren't working, they were working with that status quo.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, now you're together 24/7.
Yes.
And like you said earlier, some people are flourishing on 24/7 together.
Yeah.
They're establishing a whole load of new routines. Like our wishes come true. If you ever wished, oh, I wish I had more time with my family.
Yes.
I wish I could have breakfast with my family. I wish I could have lunch, dinner with my family. I wish, I didn't have to rush to work all the time. Well, we've arrived there and we've got that. But for
Yeah.
some people, the thought of having to spend 24/7 with someone who makes them feel unsafe, makes them feel uncomfortable, has robbed them of their self-esteem and their confidence, that's trauma.
Yes. True.
And that's hard to live with. The thing is that we might be physically confined, we might be living in a physically confined way, but our minds, they're not trapped within any boundaries.
Let's talk about two sides of I'd say, I'm not saying the same coin. Let's talk about these two sides. You've talked about one side, the people who are being the best at what they're doing, right? And they've discovered a whole new lifestyle. And there are people who just have to deal with this. So can we talk, which one would you like to talk about? Because the listeners here, our community would like to learn how to probably, if they're on the journey to become better, what are the practices that they should do? And obviously, if they're able to reach out to you, because the reason to connect you here is to reach out to you. I know you're an influencer on Instagram. You do post a lot of, I think, content out there, especially for females and males who want to live a better lifestyle, and I would say nourish their relationships, if that would be the right word here. So could you give us some tips on both the sides?
Yeah, I'm glad you've touched on being better. I'm glad you've touched on that, because this is a real opportunity for us to be better. This is a real opportunity for us to reflect and think what was working and what wasn't working.
Yes.
And I think the key to really recognize is that you're not always going to be happy in your relationships. Happiness is a changing condition.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're always going to hit some rough moments with, your spouse, with your siblings, with your co-workers, with your friends. And the thing is that if we step back and think we're expecting the world to change, and when I talk about the world, I'm not talking about geographically the world, I'm talking about our world. If we want our world to change, we can't expect our world to change without us changing.
Yes.
Yeah. So recognizing what that change is, and that takes the inward work.
Very true.
What part am I playing? What part am I playing in this relationship? One of the really important things to realize is, what are you learning? What are you learning from this experience about yourself? Because you're going to learn about other people in the process, but it's
Yes.
how are you handling the situation. So, something that I'm very, very aware of, and the reason why I came into the arena of relationships is within our communities, within the Asian community, and in general, relationships isn't something that we look at as something that we need to invest our time
Yes.
in learning.
Yes.
How to be the better version of ourselves within that relationship, and also just recognizing that in any relationship, the constant that will be is you.
True. True. I think the skills you've touched upon these skills just for the listeners to know that the skills probably which Wajeeha obviously will talk about are probably listening, communication, having conversations. We've touched on these Wajeeha just on the previous episodes. Some of which were initially we did mental toughness in bilingual, which was Urdu and English. Then we converted into English, but we've touched upon all of these things, mental toughness, having, conversations, listening, having empathy when we were talking about leadership. And I think that all comes back to, okay, so are you the real leader in the house? Are you managing? So very recently, it could also happen to anyone else, but I'm just giving a personal example that let's say, you're a couple and one of the couple actually is laid off during this time, and the hardships that come with the trauma of the whole pandemic, and plus what is the support that both of you are giving, and the support from your children, because obviously they're not going to school, and the support from your family and your parents if you're living with your parents, especially in our community, because we end up living with our parents to a certain age. So that support. I think it's a whole combination. It's a holistic building block of your whole personality, your whole lifestyle. That's everything's changed now.
Do you know what it is? Right now is the time for mass mutual reliance. Yeah.
Yes.
There's nothing that helps more than having collective mutual support from one another. Yeah. And when we share similar experiences, because there are going to be people who have similar experiences, the sense of, what, I'm going through this too, and then talking about what's worked for you, rather than trying to fix the other person, that in itself is going to be so profound and such an important aspect of life, where we're coming together as groups and we're coming together to support each other. And the epidemic has been so powerful in showing us how, as human beings, we have compassion and we have empathy. And when I'm going to swear here, but when the shit hits the fan, the tough get going.
Yeah.
You can see the helpers coming out.
Yes.
And wanting to help people. And
Yes.
I think what happened, to a certain extent, that what was happening before was people were moving into their silos. So I really believe in this sense of it takes a village to raise a child. True. And we had that back then.
Yeah.
Where we had extended family systems, and we had extended family where everyone would collect together and help each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've come into our silos, and we're no longer doing that.
I remember before we hit, I think the last conversation that we had, you were telling us, there was a whole revolution where we went into unit systems. The family pushed the kids to be in units. And now, because of the pandemic, we all want to come back together. And that was so sweet. And this what you've mentioned, this whole program is about giving. This program is not about receiving, it's about giving, because I know the problems that I'm facing, the problems that you're facing, everyone's facing them. So it's people like us who've come out in these times to give and probably receive questions and try to help each other out. Because I think we're all on the same boat, and we just want to connect. And I think that people have kind of understood, connecting digitally is very different than connecting with someone when you're face to face. So I think that's the whole topic of relationships. How do we do that? It's going to be so difficult.
Well, I think again, like you mentioned, it's about mindset. So it's rejigging our mindset. And because we became so used to living in a certain way, that became the norm. Because I remember when there was no mobile phones, there was no internet.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
And got on with life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, we're here now. And who could have guessed ever that we were going to be in this situation where we would be in lockdown in our homes? But within that lockdown within our homes, we have advances, and the advances is modern technology. Yeah. And so what we need to do is use that modern technology to our advantage and invite people into our lives through the medium of modern technology, rather than inviting them into that experience that we're having. So why are Instagrammers and YouTubers who are doing food, guiding people through cooking, guiding people through exercise, guiding people through experiencing the outside world, why are they becoming so popular? Is because they're inviting them into their world, and they're inviting them into an experience, rather than this frozen conversation, fixed to the screen conversation.
Sure.
How you can really enhance your relationship, especially if you're having to live apart, is go for a walk with your mobile phone and have the other person on the phone, where you can talk to them and they can almost come into your world in that place, in that time. And that then invites questions. Oh, I never noticed that before, or oh, you never mentioned that before. And it just makes it easier for you to connect that way. So you're not feeling so lonely because it's like, oh, I have to connect through a screen.
I think I can share this experience. So this is I live. I've been living apart from my mother. She lives and my parents basically they live in Saudi Arabia, and I have a very particular routine where I call my mother every day, and if I don't, my day just doesn't go by. So it's not something that I intend to do because she's my mother. It's just become a routine, and because we've gone digital, we used to live together for in Pakistan, but then we got married. My parents went to Saudi Arabia, then I came here with my family, and I think it's about developing those routines, those habits, and connecting on not just a superficial level, but having the camera on, having her, seeing her, telling her about what the day has been. And probably, I think it's about connecting to that level, which you said. If it's that experience. If you can take the phone out for a walk, or if you can see the other person. But I think empathetically understanding and listening to the person, because sometimes you're in a happy mood, the other time you're in a bad mood. So just understanding, I can feel that. If I'm talking to, I'm just continuing that example. If I'm talking to my mom and her voice isn't as powerful or isn't as happy as it was yesterday, I might know that she's sad or she's not feeling well. So asking the right questions and then probing into why my mom's not well, or if my father's not well. Because of the corona, there've been several reported cases where they're living. So my mom was worried because my father's a doctor and he goes to the hospital and he's over 60, obviously. So these are some of the things. How are you really asking those questions? Do you really care about the other person on the other side? And it's important for our listeners to understand that we're experiencing the same thing as yourself, right? And we're all on the same boat. So if we share these examples, our listeners would understand and how we're coping with them. So it's just a very, I say it's an iterative journey now from here on, and you can only collaborate and ask for help. That's I think all you can do.
Yeah, no, that asking for help again. People feel that again. That you can't ask for help, because if you ask for help, that's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, there are going to be people who need help, and there are going to be people who want to help. It's an inherent need that we have. It's our passion. We have this passion. We have this desire to be a helper.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's a two-way process. It's the receiving and the giving. And I think, you know, you were talking about speaking to your mother earlier. And, you know, again, like listening to stories of people who've survived the coronavirus, who've had the coronavirus and who've survived the coronavirus. And then looking back in history as well, and looking back at how people have survived disasters, how people have survived crises or situations that they found themselves in, which have been life-threatening. One of the things that has kept people going and kept people alive is faith.
Yes, very true.
It's gratitude, and it's the sense that they are wrapped with love whilst they're facing death.
Why do you think that? Now, this is it's important to touch here on faith. All of us. I'm not saying all the listeners are Muslims, but you know, both of us are. And how important do you think that faith plays in any religion, not just Islam, but I'm just talking about any religion? How important do you, and especially in this time, like, you know, how important do you think that faith is, you know, for continuity of life? And why have we let go of it, you know, with the commerciality of everything, with everything being bombarded on our face? That, you know, we just were talking about earlier, that when I used to teach business, and I used to tell students of mine that, you know, we used to be hunter and gatherers. We used to get out of our cave every day to find food. And I think it's like the whole cycles come back, because we used to be content that this is going to be our salary for the next, you know, year or two, and now we don't know whether we're going to have a job tomorrow. So do you think it's like a whole cycle coming back? And how can we get back to the faith? What are your suggestions on this?
So, you know, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the bottom foundation is shelter, is food, is water, is survival.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. For you know, where we're at, that shelter, water, survival. How are we going to survive this? You know, so that sense of urgency. And I think when it comes to faith, for me personally, it grounds me. It in that moment of that fear and that freeze and that flight, it grounds me. It brings me back to sit still and think, right, okay, I'm here right now. Where have I been before? Where I've resolved this? You know what? You know, you look for signs, don't you? Like when it comes to, oh, yeah, this happened before, and you know, I'd wanted it to be like this, but it didn't turn out like this, and it turned out like that. And you know, it's really, for me, it's really hard to describe what I mean by
what I would, you know, the things that you've said, what things come to my mind is firstly positivity, gratitude. I think being faithful, being true to yourself, and we've talked about mental resilience, mindfulness, meditation, all of these things. And I'll link back to all the previous episodes that we've had, and what Wajeeha, you said at the beginning, is it's an inward approach. So I think it's the reflective approach of ourselves. You know, how it's not about blaming others, it's about looking into yourself and being positive and having those positive thoughts. And I think prayer is very important. Meditation is very important. And I think having faith for tomorrow, you know, everything's going to be okay. You're not going to, you know, nothing bad, you know, nothing worse can happen than the situation that we're in. So I think make the most of the time, most of whatever you have, to be honest.
I mean, look, in relationships, in partnerships, let's talk about, you know, husband and wife. Each of us have different needs.
Yes.
Yeah, and you don't have to have the same style and the same needs. Yeah. But what you know, what's important is to recognize that you don't have the same style and the same needs. But what happens within relationships is that we tend to do for others what we wish they would do for us.
Yes.
So, for instance, if I want to be left alone, I'll leave you alone because I think that's what you want me to do. But actually, really, what you want me to do is to listen to you. You want to talk. You know, you want to talk through your issues.
Yep.
And so what we need to the trick there is it's to ask. Ask your partner, ask the other person, what is it that you need?
Amazing.
How do they function? Do they have a need to talk? And if so, then you sit with them and let them know, I'm eager, I'm open, I want to listen to you, I want you to tell me what you're going through. And then what that does is that strengthens your faith in the other person, that they want to help you through your pain. They want to work through that pain with you rather than trying to fix it.
Another, another thing that I've realized, very I'm just asking as well. So a lot of the time we're all going digital now, right? So a lot of the time we're all on devices. Our kids are on devices. We're on devices, and we are connected to the digital world, but we're not connected together. And not being connected together may lead to frustrations, anxiety, a blockage of understanding each other. What what kind of I think tips would you give people here listening to kind of disconnect to connect? That's a phrase that I use a lot of the times. What are the top tips that you would give for people to being able to understand their relationships with their spouse, with their kids, with their parents? Can you give us some top tips? And then after this, we'll open the floor up to questions to the people who are listening. So please do feel free to send us any questions that you have. Thank you.
So we've got to recognize that relationships are constantly in a flux, and they're always going to have some kind of conflict or disagreement, and that conflict or disagreement could be that you're spending X amount of time online and you're spending X amount of time, you're spending too much time together. So really coming together and giving each other time, the space to listen. We touched upon that, the power of listening. And the thing is, what happens is when we listen, most of the time what happens is when people listen, they listen to respond. They don't listen to understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
So you're thinking away in your head, oh, this person's going to say this, and this is going to be my response. But actually, slowing yourself down and actually really being present, and also, really understanding what it means to have stress reducing conversations. Yeah.
True.
And it's that you get a chance to talk about what it is that you're experiencing, and really talking about your inner world.
Yes.
Giving the person the space to talk about their inner world, their fears, because we all have fears, and we might try and cover it up, but we all have fears, we all have worries. Yeah. And for that person to listen, and not just listen, but for you to openly be able to hold that person, and not just figuratively, but literally.
Yes.
As well. So if you're together, then you can hold that person literally. But if you're apart, you can hold that person figuratively by giving them that space and letting them know that you're listening. And at that time, it's not for you to solve the problem.
Yes.
Because we especially if you're analytically driven, you want to fix that. You want to fix that problem. So if someone says,
we just want the solution now.
Exactly. I'm feeling a certain way. You're like, okay, how can I fix this? But what really helps is to not cut the person, and just stay with them, and you don't have to feel what the other person's feeling. You don't have to imagine what the other person's feeling, feeling. And you could be sitting next to them, or you could be thousands of miles away. Yeah. And it's like, and when you've actually felt heard, when you actually feel heard, those feelings aren't going to go away. They don't go away, but you put them to a side because you've spoken them out loud, rather than them rushing around in your head. And then they slowly walk their course.
This is really important for people to understand that there's a process that goes on in the mind once you're listening empathically and empathetically understanding, trying to be in the shoe of other people, and then speaking it out, kind of releases the negative energy from within. And this is a spiritual concept. Obviously, a lot of people talk about it, but people, exactly as you said, who are analytically driven, want the solution now. But the solution is not going to come now. The other person might have to sleep over it, might have to process the information, because that's how humans work. And it's important for people to understand, to let the other, I'm not saying let the other person go in that sense, let them go, but let them process the information, to be able to you know move forward and come with a better understanding of the situation. I think let's move towards another area apart from home. We are going to be looking at a lot of these digital conversations like me and you are having, and the people who are working from office. And now there used to be a lot of people who are working in teams, who used to delegate their tasks, but now they, for some odd reason, obviously because of Corona, they're not able to probably pressure their teams, pressure their subordinates or pressure their managers, or used to, when we used to have those coffee talks, those, and probably, I would say, areas where we could bureaucratically get things done, and those aren't going to happen because of the digital workplace that's going to happen. What kind of impact do you think this will have in the teams of the future, in the organizations of the future, and how can managers or maybe subordinates ensure that as we are moving further, we don't have a problematic situation where we're all the time on meetings and all the time on Zoom? Because I'm seeing a lot of, initially when we hit rock bottom, we were seeing a lot of people just doing Zoom meetings the whole day long and no work was done. So are you giving tips on can you give some tips on these as well? How do you manage your time, manage your team, and manage that relationship? You know what I'm talking about, right? So
I think we need to go back to being human.
Okay.
Really having that human to human conversation, that human to human connection. I think there's going to be a revolution of working in a totally different way. There's going to be so many findings that are going to come out of this. Big organizations are going to discover that they didn't need to work in the way they were working. It wasn't as productive as they thought they were.
Yes.
You can have meetings virtually. You don't have to jump on a plane and go thousands of miles away to attend a meeting. So the carbon footprint is going to hopefully be decreased as well. We're gonna find different ways of communicating to people. Empathy is huge. Compassion is huge. And those, I think,
how do we bring it out? How do we bring it out? Like, is it, people are struggling now than ever before. I took a lecture for an hour very recently, and I felt, it's just not me, but a lot of the energy now that we're pushing online is more energy than we used to give, because we're not on the receiving end, we're just on the giving end. So how do you ensure that we're receiving as much energy? And I think you'd second me when I talk about this energy, because there is an energy that is released from within, and you receive an energy as well. So how do we ensure that is on a balance?
I think, again, recognizing that we're different. That we've got our unique coping mechanisms, and some people might thrive on just giving, and some people might thrive on just receiving, and really having those honest, open conversations and asking the right questions. Because sometimes we ask questions, but they're not the right questions. We ask lots of questions, and they're closed questions. Having open-ended questions, starting a meeting, asking people how they are, checking in more on people, having those one-to-one conversations, and also not everyone responds in the same way.
Yes. Very true. You've touched on an amazing topic about personalities and how they're unique and how they're different. I think it will be more important for managers, for subordinates, for other people to now understand individually people than ever before. We can't put them in boxes and say this is my team. They are individual people, and I think recruiting them on an individual personality level, understanding them on not on a superficial level, but on a very deeper level. It will become a must now. Otherwise, you will relinquish your team, and they won't be the performers that you've hired them for. So I think you've really touched upon a very insightful, I think, topic here, which is very complex as well.
I think for as a manager, to be able to acknowledge what tends to happen is that when you're working on a project, the momentum is such that you're focusing on what's not working, because then the project isn't going to be delivered. So solution again, the problem finds the solution. But when we start praising, when we start letting our colleagues, our friends, our family, our children, our spouses know, thank you for doing that for me, or that what you did, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really going to help. When you start doing that, when you start having those kind of human to human conversations, watch how people want to do it more.
True. It's amazing. I think you've ended with the right note, that having giving those feedback, giving the gratitude, and also I think not just positive but constructive feedback, and the way that you're going to deliver it is going to be entirely different. And I think it's about creating and maintaining those connections and conversations as teams move forward. And I think we've just recently we released a survey on working from home, and we've realized that a lot of people are putting in more time and more effort from home than they were in offices, because you can't see those facial and body expressions that you could in the office, and now you're basically in your four walls, and you're just trying to contemplate what the other person would be thinking. So it is a difficult endeavor.
I think people are going to rethink this whole working from home stuff, because there'd be times where you'd approach your manager and you say, "Oh, can I work from home?" And they say, "Your role, you can't work from home. For your role, you can't work from home." And now what people have discovered is actually people are more productive, and there are better results as a result of working from home, and the micromanagement doesn't need to be there.
Yep. I think that this is just to conclude for today. We've hit the 30. We've actually crossed the 30-minute boundary. It's been an amazing pleasure, Wajeeha, to have you. And people have commented. They haven't asked the questions, but they've commented on the conversation that we're having, and they're just loving the way that we're speaking about it. So everyone said salam to you. They've said they've appreciated the efforts. So alhamdulillah, they haven't asked a particular question. I think we've kind of covered most of the topics. So just to kind of recap on what we were doing, today we were talking about relationships and its importance of I think disconnecting to connect, not just with our spouse, with our children, with our parents, but obviously we did touch upon the wider business environment as well, and how technology, how we would have to, we've talked about embracing technology, but the importance of being human, which is an element that Wajeeha covered, which is more than ever required today. And I highly second what Wajeeha is saying because of the need, and I think the need for giving and receiving, and I think creating that collaborative effort, and lastly asking for help. Very, very important at this point in time. We're all in the same boat. We have shared, relevant experiences. It's important, if you're out there, if you need help, you can either reach me, reach Wajeeha. Wajeeha, before we end, can you please tell us what is the best medium, what is the best way to reach you, if any of our listeners would want to, would want to reach out and ask you, what's the best method?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can contact me via my website, which is Wajeeha Amin.co.uk. Instagram, Wajeeha Amin. Twitter, Wajeeha Amin. Reach out. I'd like to hear from you. And as always, if there's anything that I can help anyone with, just reach out.
And please, once again, just as a shout out, if you think that this message is important, please do share it with the community. We're not looking to make money here. We're looking to help and save lives. And every comment that we get, we're basically trying to help people in these tough times. And I think even on our YouTube channel, we've got an amazing response of the whole reset series. This is the second last program, so we end tomorrow with corporate entrepreneurship, or how, as you know, Wajeeha has touched upon very, very briefly on how teams will be working, but how the whole situation for teams will change, and how people will become entrepreneurs is what we will be touching on tomorrow. We have a special guest coming in tomorrow, so please do join us. The time tomorrow will be 1 p.m. And if you have any comments, feel free to join Wajeeha. One of the networks that I'm connected to, Wajeeha, is on Instagram, and I learn a lot of things. One of the reasons for inviting us is because of the positive energy that she's driving and creating a whole community on Instagram. So thank you so much, Wajeeha, again. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and we hope to stay in touch with you. And inshallah, may Allah bless you for all the input that you've given, for all the insights. Jazakallah. Thank you so much. Thank you